All right, Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm waiting for our actual guest, Mess Birgens, who's the head of Urbanism. There you are. Hi, Mess. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So it's Mess is in Copenhagen right now, where it is 11:20 p.m. He's taking a flight to Vienna tomorrow morning. And so he said it's no problem. He can stay as long as he can catch his flight to Vienna. So I think we're good. I'm not going to spend a long time in introducing, and then maybe we'll have time for a couple of questions at the end. As I said, Mess Birgens is the head of Urbanism, which I love that title, at COBE, which is an architecture and urban design firm in Copenhagen. And Mess, I'll just let you take it from here.
Thank you so much, Peter, and thank you so much to NIS for having us, inviting us to join you today at this event. I am gonna tell you a bit about what we do in the office of COBE. This is a little glimpse into our everyday life here. We're around 150 people in the office, working quite internationally today. An office from 2006, so been expanding quite a lot and working, unfortunately, yet not in the States, but in Canada and Toronto and many other places. I'm going to talk about Copenhagen today. This is where the office is born, and also where a lot of us from the office grew up, or at least had a big part of our life. And it's also been the place where COBE generated a lot of its thinking and thinking on both architecture, urbanism, and landscape design. And what you see here is Copenhagen in the back, the sort of medieval core of Copenhagen. And then in the forefront, you see one of the modern expansions of Copenhagen, which is the Northern Harbor area, where we have been working for the past 10 years, developing and master planning this piece here. And we moved recently into the harbor to sort of test, try our own medicine and the urban planning we are working on. So this is sort of what we have done now, but we're also looking into the future of the next phases of the plan. This is a 50-year perspective we're working on, and the planning and the work has somehow just started. So it's a good thing here. We are situated in the middle of what we have done and the future of planning at the North Harbor, as also being a very important part of Copenhagen. This is the full plan, as you can see here, for the vision of Copenhagen, and this is the small part that has been finalized now. So this is a sort of modern Copenhagen talking here. One of the biggest urban developments in Northern Europe, working towards a very sustainable urban expansion of Copenhagen city. This is part of the growth also pattern of Copenhagen that is still going on, and part of solving that growing population. Just to look back, we did some studies some 5 years ago on Copenhagen in terms of looking into the change that the city has been going through. And one of the big and important stories of Copenhagen is how it changed from a very car-dominated city to being a city focused on people and urban life around people. It actually, the reason why we did this whole study back then was that somehow Copenhagen changed from being a quite unpopular city in the 90s and a quite poor city into being a very popular city and also a city with an enormous growth also economically. And it suddenly started ranking in Lonely Planet and other of these indexes on livability, and became very popular in many ways. And it was not only about the city, of course, it was also about the whole culture of the Nordic region growing around it. So this was a notion of a sort of success of the city that we looked into. And what we found interesting around this is where we grew up in Copenhagen. The story we grew up with was this sort of fairy tale of the Little Mermaids, which was the most popular icon of Copenhagen, maybe even Denmark for in the past. And compared to other urban icons, it was very is insignificant in many ways, and sort of out of scope with other city icons around the world. But what's interesting for us is that it totally changed. Actually, Copenhagen is not known for the Little Mermaid so much anymore. It's much more known for the culture of biking and the lifestyle of being a Copenhagener. It's become a whole movement in Copenhagen, being proud of biking and taking this as part of your everyday life, and also it's become an urban promotion of how we tackle different challenges in the city. Today, almost half of Copenhageners bike to and from work every day. And that is no matter the weather circumstances. It's sort of also it's a pride thing that people take part of. What we like about this notion is that Copenhagen is sort of famous for this now, but also how we approach any urban space design in Copenhagen and also abroad. We really discuss the bike culture a lot because it has this a very meaningful purpose of both being a healthy way of moving, but also a energy-friendly, zero energy way of moving. So it's become sort of the center of design for the city, and something we really work a lot with enhancing designs for. This is the central station, not central. This is one of the busiest station in Denmark called Nørreport Station, where we have designed this big urban space around it with the bikes at the core of it. Another thing is how urban spaces in the city changed and was developed around urban life. This used to be a big parking lot that was then put underground in 4 stories of parking, and then overground we have this huge playground for people and social life. So the notion of this change of Copenhagen became sort of it also became the title of this book we wrote, which is called Our Urban Living Room. And this image here became sort of an iconic way of also discussing how the Copenhageners started using the urban space as their living rooms. So this is also the most extreme image of how this guy took his living room and put it into the urban space of Copenhagen. But some years ago, things changed, as everybody knows. And the urban living room closed down in Copenhagen. It closed down all around the world. Things suddenly changed overnight. Our lives became caught in these social controlled spaces where we could only be a certain amount of people. And in general, not only work life got trapped in the screen, our life would diminish to this sort of virtual space, which was at the beginning very scary, even though we as people seem to get used to these new circumstances quite quickly. It was also suddenly a huge opportunity to actually advance the global society in communication. And we see that as an example of how we as people can change our lifestyle within actually overnight almost, and how technology also is so strong these days that we can sort of wrap our lives into the cloud and make things work in a totally different way than it used to do. So this notion is important. I mean, the situation of urban life sort of for a period of time, at least, it became a void. Nobody went outside, but we also learned a lot. For us at COBE, it became a space, the COVID and the pandemic became a space for new discussions and a new era of looking into where do we come from and where are we moving, and how can we use these moments of crisis to advance our society and the way we live. We are in a new age where we need to start thinking differently. We just heard talks about circularity, which is a super important topic. And in general, the discussion on resources needs to be tackled way differently. We also saw the opportunity to look back, because obviously we've always had crisis. We always get through it, and crises also become opportunities in terms of finding new solutions on things. Today we are facing a horrible crisis in Europe with a new war ongoing. And then there will be other crises up and coming on resources, but maybe a certain opportunity on circularity will then develop from that situation, etc. So we need to somehow look different at these crises, and maybe, if possible, we could start being a bit more aware about the future. At least we know a set of crises that we need to handle on climate change and resources and other things. So maybe we could start enabling this future, and that's something we have made an ambition for the office future work, to really combine our thoughts on urbanism, landscape, and architecture into future-proofing designs of urbanism and so on. So what we hope for is that we define these 7 different strategies, and we hope from these we can start enabling change in our discussions and our design on both architecture as well as urban design. So we can start maybe being at the forefront of some of the problems that we are facing. And just as the last part of my presentation, I would like to take you through some of these designs and situations we are working in today. And first of all, discussing climate, which is maybe the biggest and most pressing crisis we have hanging over our heads. This is a project we are working on in Vejle, which is a city in Jutland, a part of Denmark, where we have future-proofed, or at least we are working on future-proofing the harbor from also working in flood events. This is on the right side here. You can see a 100-year flood event. So the design of the levels in the city will still work in whatever situation of flooding, and at the everyday life, it will of course be an open, generous harbor front in the city. Talking about climate, we also very exposed to rain events in Copenhagen, where the rain is just picking up and becoming more and more. And we need to integrate water handling in whatever space we're working on. This is an example of a big park we're developing outside Copenhagen in a city called Høje-Taastrup, where we are developing a big park as also being a climate proofing space, where when it doesn't rain, it's the longest skate park in Europe. And when it rains, it suddenly becomes this urban flood and basin, and again, like an activity and an attraction actually in the urban space. Moving on, we are also discussing the built mass, and whenever we master plan and work with especially the existing city, transforming brownfields, etc., we always face these old buildings that we fight for keeping and fight for reusing, adapting, and repurposing into different use. This is a school in a place called Roskilde, where we also built a big rock museum. And in general, it's a huge old factory for concrete factory that has been developed into a cultural anchor point in larger scale Copenhagen. Talking about transformation, this is an example from the North Harbor area, where we have our office, where we transformed this old corn silo into modern housing. And it's really good example of something we had to fight for keeping, but some of the most popular building plots actually to be sold at the beginning of the North Harbor project. Building new buildings is obviously something we face all the time. And one focus we have on building new is really this flexibility thing. If we can build more flexible for the future, we can also runningly customize the buildings inside in whatever we need for whatever functionality we need. This is Adidas headquarters in Germany, which we have recently completed as this huge roof over what we call the Adidas family, where underneath you have 10,000 square meters of office space that can be flexible in terms of different use. So moving on to a larger scale, extraordinary communities, as we call it. How do we plan for creating a life that sort of frames a sustainable way of living? In Copenhagen, we are so lucky that the harbor front has been cleaned, and actually you can swim in the harbor. So it's creating this recreational city in the whole area of Copenhagen. But it's part of this health strategy that Copenhagen is working on together with the bicycling strategy, in terms of creating a place where you actually move by bike and by foot and use and don't use your car, so we can have a city that's both healthy in terms of air quality, but also in terms of how we move around. Talking about mobility, we have built this station just outside Copenhagen, which is sort of a park and ride also for people in the suburbs to park their car and take a high-speed train into Copenhagen. It also serves as a bridge between two neighborhoods, and like that, it's both a hybrid of the moving between existing situations across the rails, but also it shapes this space for everyday commuters taking a rest, waiting for their train, and it frames this sort of extraordinary situation where it doesn't matter whether the train is 10 minutes delayed, because actually you have a nice situation to wait within. We also worked on this project, which is now being realized all over Europe, which is an ultra-fast charging station. The first ones have been built across Denmark now, and it's purely built in wood, though it has a steel skeleton inside. But it's wooden structures as umbrellas over these charging stations that are framing this new way of charging your car, which is this idea based on fresh air and places to take a rest while your car charges. The bike culture is a big part of, as I said, our focus in especially Copenhagen, but also when we work abroad. And we keep challenging this bike culture of especially Copenhagen, because the municipality is very open also to looking into how can we keep investing in this and making more and more people take their bike. So this is, I would say, an extraordinary space in many ways at the University of Copenhagen, where we have built this huge plaza as a combination of urban space, both green and hardscapes, but also a combination of bike parking and urban spaces for socializing, but also for teaching and taking part as sort of a learning landscape next to the university you see in the back here of the plaza. So it's really pushing pushing the agenda of bike culture and how we can see new landscapes take shape and improve the way we live, hopefully, and prioritize green mobility and healthy ways of living. So that's it for now. And then I'm looking forward to talking a bit to Peter.
Thank you, Mads. That was great. Those of you who have been to Copenhagen, you've probably seen a lot of COBE's projects, particularly the Nordport station, the busiest transit station in all of Copenhagen, which they transformed about, is it 10 years ago now? Or less?
Yeah, about 10 years ago.
That completely kind of changed that whole part of town. I'm told that we're running a little late, so I only have time for one question. So I'm going to try and ask you a good one, Mads.
That sounds good.
You talked about enabling change, and also when you showed the corn silo that was turned into apartments. And I should say that they were, at the time they were built, they ended up being, because of the cost of construction, the most expensive apartments in all of Copenhagen.
Yeah.
But architects have a funny role, because architects actually are usually considered to be problem solvers. So you have a client and they present you with a series of needs or a program, and you have to creatively solve those problems sometimes. So you're not necessarily in a position to enact change, but you try and enable change. You try and kind of promote the agenda, the manifesto that you believe in. And the one thing is making livable cities. I think that's the most important one. But then this new kind of transformation of that in terms of future-proofing cities has also become really important. So I'm kind of wondering, as an architect, and you could take a project, for instance, if you wanted to, like the Høje Tastrup project, which was taking the issue of urban landscapes needing to find a way to hold water during extreme rain conditions so they don't flood, and turning it into an amenity, a really amazingly beautiful skate park. How does that work? How did COBE kind of interact with the public agencies and all of those things in order for a project like that to happen?
Well, it's a very good question, and it's changing from project to project, obviously. But somehow we have this this sort of devil's advocate role, you know, because we work for a developer or a development company, and then we also really want to do the best possible for the city and the municipality and so on. So I think the architect is somehow the facilitator of the best solution, but we have to make everybody happy at the same time, both money people as well as the people sort of in charge of public well-being. So for this particular project, it was quite interesting because actually it was the fact that we were lacking money for this park. We only had like a minimal budget. We had budget for grass, basically, and a few trees for the whole park. So what we did was that we started, and there was a big discussion in the whole team of the project, and we found out that instead of having all these pipes underground, which would take care of the rainwater of the area, which is obviously a huge and very important task today when we develop these parks. We used all this money and took all this economy for pipes and took it overground and actually found out that we could handle all the rainwater for the entire district of this, not just our side, but also around it within this new park. So we actually doubled the economy of the park space, and that made the possibility of creating this quite fantastic skate park in Copenhagen that now has become a regional attraction and also made Høje Tastrup a destination for more than just the new local neighbors of the area.
So,
yeah.
So thank you, Mess. And if Mess is looking for clients in North America, so if any of you have some really great projects for future-proofing that they can work on, they would be happy to talk to you. I will tell you that working in Copenhagen is a really great thing. Mess is going to Vienna because they're taking the entire office to Vienna for a study tour this weekend. So it's a pretty nice place to work. Thank you, Mess.
It is. Thank you.